He is the man behind the lens, the storyteller chasing chaos, grit, and glory. Today, he gives us a peek at his upcoming documentary of one of wrestling's most dangerous icons, the one they call Sabu. Straight Outta Jersey welcomes filmmaker Joe Clarke.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Straight Outta Jersey. I am your host, Joe Zapata. Today, we joined by a filmmaker who is the creative mind behind the upcoming documentary about pro wrestler Sabu, who we recently lost on May 11th. The documentary will drop September 15th, and he's here to talk about the entire process. I welcome to the show filmmaker, director Joe Clarke.
Oh, thanks, Joe. I've never had an intro video before. That got me hyped. That was like Limp Bizkit WrestleMania 17 level right there. I was ready to go.
Thank you so much for coming on and taking the time. I really appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you first, where did you grow up? You grew up around here?
I grew up in the Midwest, kind of bounced around. I consider Iowa my home.
Okay.
I went to the University of Iowa, cut my teeth on filmmaking there. And then I moved out to LA for a few years. Now I'm based in Las Vegas. I go back to LA and kind of just, so I'm originally from the Midwest though.
Okay. So filmmaking was something you always wanted to do, directing and getting into film?
Yeah, I've been making movies since I was 10 years old. So
wow.
I've been very fortunate to know what I wanted to do. And, I think what's so interesting about this project is I've always had the goal to make a really impactful wrestling documentary. I remember growing up watching Wrestling with Shadows and Beyond the Mat. And I remember being really impacted by those. And those were big influences on this project. And then I made a project with Rob Van Dam in 2016, which it's called Headstrong. It's available on Amazon stuff. And I liked the film, but it didn't quite fulfill the creative vision that I was aiming for. And so this project was something that literally was like a childhood dream of mine to bring to fruition. And so I feel so fortunate enough to be a part of Sabu's story because I feel like it really helped to bring that, like I said, that childhood dream come true to make like a hard hitting wrestling documentary, which I think that's what this is.
You grew up a wrestling fan, obviously.
Huge mark. Yeah, I remember probably earliest memories, probably like age 3, seeing Ric Flair. I have like a picture of me as a kid with like the Ultimate Warrior blow up doll and like, those other dolls. And then I fell off a couple years, got back in big with the Attitude Era with Stone Cold and all that fun stuff. And then what's interesting though is that, in junior high, once I got to like junior high school, being a wrestling fan wasn't cool anymore.
No, it wasn't.
So I was a heavily closeted wrestling fan for a long time until my mid-20s, about 10 years ago. My roommate and we started slowly divulging that we were marks to each other until like it kind of opened us up to be like, oh yeah. And it's like, wait, why do you know every Backlash main event from here? I think you're a bigger fan, you're letting on. And so since then, I've been fortunate enough to connect with like the wrestling community in a big way. And so, wrestling fan my whole life.
So what drew you to Sabu's story? What was it about Sabu's story?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I was very surprised he even got on board in the first place because he is such a private person.
Yes.
My draw to him was, like I said, in junior high, there's the stigma of wrestling being fake. Like, why do you watch that? I remember my dad showing me this like Wrestling Secrets Exposed, and it was that guy with the mask, and it was like horrible. And I was like, Dad, like I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to say like Santa Claus isn't real. Like I wanted to show him Mankind, The Rock, Rumble '99 to be like, hey, what do you think about this? You know what I mean? But
exactly.
I think that's why I was so drawn to Beyond the Mat in a lot of ways. So my draw to Sabu is and this was my pitch to him, is I knew he was the perfect conduit to reality. And I wanted to make a film that wrestling fans could wear as a badge of honor to show to their non-wrestling fans who might say like, why do you watch that wrestling stuff? They could show them this film and be like, hey, if you think wrestling is so fake, why don't you watch this? And I felt like Sabu was literally the perfect person to be that surrogate for reality. And that's why John was like, your story is important because I think that this is going to bend people's perception of reality and wrestling. And that's what I've always wanted to do.
You know, when I talked to Sabu, I found it very interesting that he is wrestles in front of thousands of people, but yet he's such a quiet introvert. He doesn't like to talk that much. That's why his character didn't. He just likes to to himself. What did you find out? Was it hard making a documentary with him, pulling the things out of him you needed?
So it's so interesting. I look back, everything is so surreal about the entire project.
Yes.
It literally feels like I was going through my own stuff at the time, but I feel like I was front row to a legend story without even being fully in the moment until after he passed, and I look back on it, I'm like, wow, like that was a wild ride. And I didn't even know that I was on the ride. And so, because Rob and I, we talked for a couple of years about different project ideas. We're always spitballing. We're business partners and like, hey, what do we try this project? And I always knew Sabu would be a perfect documentary, but in the back of my head, Rob and I were both like, he could be kind of flaky, kind of challenging because he's, he's a private guy, so it might be tough. And so we had that initial meeting where I kind of pitched him the story, and at first he was like, like, why do you want to do a story on me? And then the three of us were talking. We're like, Sabu, like, we want to do this with you. Is there anything, like, do you have anything on your plate in your life that you're looking to do? And he's like, I really want one last match. And like, that's when Rob and I turned to each other. We're like, yeah, this is perfect right here,
Really great.
Now that we didn't start filming though, for probably about 4 or 5 months after that, there was a lot of, both of us were kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I was nervous about committing because I wanted him all the way in. I didn't know if he would go all the way in. And it was a very challenging road. There would be like some weeks where I just wouldn't hear from him. And like, I'm like, I don't know if he's in this. I don't know if he's not. And eventually we started finding our footing. The whole process, yes, was very challenging. That's part of the reason is like, I'm so grateful for this project is that it actually came about. And, I had to film in ways where after 20 minutes, he'd be like, all right, I don't want to do this anymore.
That sounds like him.
But here's what I will say. What I realized almost immediately on our first interview with him is that I brought up a couple things, and I knew, you've seen wrestlers shoot interviews and stretch this, stretch that. The most honest individual I've ever met in my life. And that was the first thing that caught my eye is when I would talk to him, he would give me his 100% truth in the moment and honest, unfiltered answers. And that's something that, like, from an actor or a real life person or most documentaries, you do not see. There was no, how do I sugarcoat this? How do I paint this light? It was rip the Band-Aid off. This is what he thought. And so in the actual filming process, it was tough to, get a hold of him sometimes or like meet up sometimes. But when we actually did, it was like, great. He was 100% authentic to who he was. But to the point, like, where I literally asked him, like, Sabu, you're the most honest person. Like, I want to be like that. Do you ever get in trouble for that? And he's like, oh yeah, all the time.
He's had a ton of injuries, the hip replacements and everything. When you were dealing with him, did you notice anything, because we all were kind of shocked by his death. Did you notice anything weird, maybe could have thought, hey, he might have been sick or anything?
It's, again, the whole thing is such a surreal experience of, he would definitely say things that were, that were prophetic, and that's made him seem like a dark place in some instances. His wife had just passed away. He was still in the grieving process, injuries, all that. You could tell that there were some clouds hanging over him, and but not to the, like, I didn't know what the line was, Sabu being Sabu versus any other more extreme version of him, because that's who he's been for the last 35 years, So I've definitely had some enlightening conversations with Rob about him, just in terms of, he's been himself this whole time. And so,
Mhm.
I don't think his mindset or his injuries, they've always been kind of severe and crazy since like the mid 90s when, Chris Benoit was throwing him and breaking his neck and stuff like that. Uh,
Mhm.
at the same time, he definitely said some things where I felt like he knew the end was near. And in some
Yes.
ways, I feel like this last match was his swan song in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, but it didn't actually hit me until
Wow.
he passed away. And so it was such a bizarre experience because I would be editing the film every day. I'd be
Mhm.
filming with him every week. He'd be saying things. But then once he passed away, when I went back and rewatched it, everything took on a whole new meaning. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even see this because I was just like, oh, that's Sabu being Sabu,
Wow. Wow. Did you uncover any sides of his personality that fans don't see that's going to be revealed in this documentary? Some things we don't know
Well,
about Sabu?
it's so funny, it's really fun to just go through the distribution process of this film because
Okay.
first of all, people are like, I remember when they first saw the trailer, there's a couple comments that thought the film was AI because like, wait a minute, like how is this film? He just passed away. I don't understand. Like there's a movie as well. And
Mhm.
so and also too, like I've seen a couple comments, and this is what I'm both fascinated and excited about is most people assume because Rob is a producer, you're
Yeah.
going to have that polished, perfect light of a human being,
Mhm.
like for example, I've seen so many documentaries on Netflix or Amazon where like, let's say The Last Dance, the Chicago Bulls documentary.
Yep.
It's
Mhm.
amazing. Michael Jordan was the producer, so he's going to gloss it over and make sure Michael Jordan looks good. I still loved the series; it's very
Yeah.
cool, but it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, he's going to have control over that. And so
Of
I've seen
course.
a couple of comments online of people saying like, "Oh, Rob's a producer, so it's going to be a fluff piece. It's going to be this or that." I've been honestly very pleasantly surprised that Rob has cut me loose to have creative control over this film, and
Wow.
I think that people are going to be because it's truth. It's not trying to paint anything. That was my goal, is a very raw, unfiltered, true look at Sabu. And what I learned through his lifestyle is that really his in-ring chaotic nature did match his outside the ring. And so I think people are going to be very surprised at where we go with the film.
What did Sabu's like family and friends think about this project? Were they on board with it also?
It was such an intimate project. It was literally, I filmed it on my cell phone. So it was just me and my camera
Mhm.
equipment and Sabu,
Okay.
and Rob brought us together. And I
Okay.
told Rob, like, because when we made Headstrong, I'm very proud of Headstrong. It's gotten great reviews. It's
Mhm.
really out there, but it wasn't my baby necessarily. And so before we even began, I told Rob, I was like, it's really important for me to fulfill my creative vision on this. And he completely respected that, which is awesome. I think that's a very rare quality. And I think Sabu's friends and family, they've been very supportive. I think they might be a little shocked at some of the authenticity, but at the
Mhm.
same time, um, I feel like Sabu was going through a lot of darkness in his last year, and I think people respected that I stood in the fire with him and I didn't look away and I was there with him. And I think
Mhm.
building a legacy piece and pointing the camera on someone who never got his flowers, I think is going to go a long way. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I tried to present a truth, but it also is I'm proud to carry that legacy and tell that story because no one really did, when he was alive
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Exactly. You're right.
So I own that, and I'm excited for people to also see that.
Did you have a big emotional moment in the documentary that we're going to see? Maybe Sabu breaks down or something. Anything as heavy that we're going to get to see in this documentary?
Yeah, I really think I always think to myself, like, there would be points where I watch it and be emotional before he
Wow.
passed away.
Wow.
So then now afterwards, I think that most grown wrestling fans will get at least teary eyed during
Yeah.
the film, and it is it's very emotional. Um, it's it's a man who, like I said, never And in some ways, I view it as we met at the perfect time. You know, we converged at our lives at very
Mm-hmm.
similar points. And I saw he's a legend. I'm nobody,
Yeah.
you know, but I saw myself in him in the sense of someone that never got their just due, but still putting their entire body into their art. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what's so fascinating and interesting to me is that, you know, we told the story, but the whole movie really hinges on the last match, right? And that was
Yep.
the whole crux
Joey
of it.
Janela. Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I told Sabu this after the match, but I knew we had a good film.
Mm-hmm.
So I was nervous about the last match because we've seen those wrestlers who, you know, go for one more match. It's a little like either like, you know, it's father time. It's like, you know, like it's kind of sad. She's like, oh, this isn't the same. This is what I wanted to be, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so as a filmmaker, I wanted to respect him and I wanted him to make him look good. And so going to the last match, I was nervous. I was like, should I film this in slow motion? What are the camera tricks and gimmicks that I can
Mm-hmm.
do that'll protect his legacy and the film, while not like you don't have this really good movie, and at the end it's like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, but what was so interesting is that I feel like on his last match with Joey Janela, he attained a certain level of artistry where completely flipped my perspective once again, and I had so much respect because he literally he was in like a level of art I feel like in wrestling and an emotional spectacle that not many people attain in any field. And so
Mm-hmm.
I told him after the fact, like, dude, I was so nervous for this match. I was like trying to come up with ways to cover it up, and you put on a hell of a show. And for that, like, I respect him at the end of the world.
Did you finish the documentary before he passed?
Yeah, so we had the last match. I talked to him on the phone a week later, and we were on the phone talking about what we wanted. So here's the thing is I knew we only had like one scene to go, but this
Mm-hmm.
is Sabu, classic Sabu. We talked on the phone. He was like, okay, cool. Well, so that's going to be part one. Now, part two, I'm going to Japan. You know, and I was like, dude, we're making a sequel in Japan with this thing. And I
Yeah.
like, you know, it was a difficult project to do. And I had been working on it for like a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So I told him about the scene that I had in mind for the ending, but I didn't tell him it was going to be the ending. I was more like, I didn't have the heart to be like, hey, like, I think we finished the end line of the film, you know?
Okay.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, but
That's
he was
good.
like, no, dude, we got to go. Was this part two, part three? I'm like, oh, wow. I love the ambition, you know, like he was
Mm-hmm.
on board at this point. And that was a cool thing you asked me about. It was like pulling teeth sometimes, but he actually, I found out, loved the documentary and the process. And
Mm-hmm.
people tell me, his friends and family, that he was talking about it to them. And so I think he was like kind of gamesing me a little bit of like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't want to do this. You're intruding on my life. But secretly, like, I like this. You know what I mean? Uh,
Did he get to see it at all before the final?
so, so yeah, so I guess to go back, we only had like one more day to film literally before
Okay.
he passed away. And so that was really crazy, is that, you know, the ending then turns into something different. Um, he was such an artist and so in the moment and authentic to himself. I knew he wasn't the kind of guy that was going to be like, hey, let me watch this scene. He's just living his life and I'm filming
Mhm.
around him. But I will say there was a key pivot point where I could tell he was getting excited about the project. Is I filmed this drone shot that like overlooked Las Vegas, and then it came
Mhm.
down and panned to him in the backyard. And
Mhm.
I showed him like, oh, this is kind of a cool shot. Look at this. And he went, oh, wow. He's like, that's some Hollywood shit right there. And like from that point on, he was always hitting me up and like, are we filming today? Are we filming today? And I
Really?
was
Okay.
like, oh wow, this is kind of cool. So I feel like, you know, he didn't get to see it. I showed him a couple clips. Um, I think that I know he would love it, but I don't even think it was even like important to him like that. He's not the kind of guy that's like going to watch himself on screen, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I do remember another, you know, critical conversation that's been guiding me is that, you know, because there was a few months where I would try and go all in and he'd pull back, and like it was just hard. We were both 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and eventually I was like, I'm going all in. I want to make this movie. And he said, let's make it and let's release it, get it out in the world. And that also kind of tells me, looking back, that he kind of knew something was going on. And
Yep.
so, yeah, like I said, the whole experience, it feels like a fever dream in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I agree with you. He knew something was going on because that whole last 2 months before he left, he had doing like his last match tour, and then he had when he died, the Dark Side of the Ring appeared 2 days later, and then you're filming the documentary about this. It just, all the timing was like something he knew. And RVD said he wanted to say something he thought to him sometimes that never came out. How do you want this documentary to be seen by the fans? As a tribute, investigation? I don't know. How would you want them to see this?
I don't want this to be like a, like a ID Discovery Channel piece, I wanted to just make like the best story possible, and I wanted to be as authentic and truthful to Sabu, and I wanted to transcend the wrestling genre. I wanted non-wrestling fans to be able to watch this and just see a human being and their story and their pain and their grieving, and be able to relate to that. And I think that's what this film does, is it humanizes Sabu in such a amazing way that makes him larger than life in a lot of ways. And that's the other thing too, is I agree with you. I think he was playing 4D chess with like everyone. Like, I think he actually was a very spiritual person, and I think he knew something was up. That might have been, why he was more accepting of letting me in. And so when I hear tribute, I do think it's going to honor his legacy. But again, it's not at the expense of who he was.
Yeah. When you were filming this, at any time did it take an unexpected turn where you're like, oh, and we have to reel Sabu back in, where you thought, hey, this could be a little bit crazy?
Oh, well, the movie gets crazy. No, I was definitely. It was, we had several conversations where I told him, I was like, I don't know what's normal and what's not normal. I don't know if this, like, what I told him that was very upfront was, I don't want to come across to people watching this that I'm influencing you in any way to do your thing. I want to be a fly on the wall.
Okay.
And that's part of it, is in the movie, is a conversation that we have where he's like, you're having no influence on me. This is how I live my life, and this is how I get by, and like you said, he literally sacrificed his body for decades. And so a lot of it is just doing what he had to do to get by a relatively pain-free life. I can't imagine the amount of pain that he was in. Like, I'm 37, and I feel like if I stub my toe, I'll be in the hospital for 3 weeks. And this guy is I ruminated on it. I'm like, man, everything I've seen, I can't, he has to be like, he's literally existing in like a higher dimension of pain than I can ever fathom.
That last match with Joey Janela, when he got thrown into the thing and went flying out, I thought he was dead. I mean, the pain, and you were there, so you saw that. I mean, how was he in the back of the locker room after that was over?
Yeah, so we have footage of that. And, I think, again, I go back to, I wasn't going in. I didn't even know what kind of match it was going into it. And I'm actually not really, I don't want to, I know a lot of hardcore fans know what it is, but I don't want to spoil it because we build it up in real time to where it's revealed. I didn't find out till the day before. And I was like, there were so many pivots and twists and turns to answer a previous question. Where I was like, oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting. And then, again, I was still in the mode of, how do I make him look good in the event that, he's not able to perform at the level he wants. And, yeah, this assistant, one of the assistant cameras I brought on board, Joe DeFalco, he's a Las Vegas local. I remember I was on the other side of the ring filming that spot, and I didn't quite see what happened. And then after the match later that night, I asked Joe, I was like, hey, did you get the spot? Because I just saw him go out of the ring. he
Okay.
hit the spot where he went out of the ring, and he went, yeah, yeah, and he showed it to me, and I literally, my jaw dropped, and I went,
That's crazy.
and so I think it's going to be literally in documentary land the craziest wrestling shot in the history of cinema. It is wild, and I think to make it even more wild is he was pretty dang lucid and normal after the match. And that's where I go back to, who is this guy? Like, he's talking very normally, and like he was Sabu after the match, you know? And
Mhm.
so like, and I talked to him on the phone the next week, and I texted him the next day, and that's when my respect like elevated, because I couldn't comprehend. I'm like, wow, like he's still going, you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah,
and
he's
he's
still
planning
doing
his
it.
next matches and like living
Mhm.
his life. And so um
Wow, that's great.
again, though, I feel like, and I do add like almost a spiritual element to the film, because like he had to have known something was going on. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And that's one of the big mysteries. And I feel like that's part of the aura of the project. Is it's almost like a Heath Ledger, Paul Walker, you know, I
Mhm.
don't even want to say cloud, because I don't view it as negative. I view it as like, this man knew something we didn't in a lot of ways, and that's why I'm like, so I have so much gratitude for being attached to it.
Mhm. Do you have other wrestlers in there, interviewing that you interview besides maybe
Yeah,
RVD? Or
we have RVD. So the way that I wanted to film is there are a few interviews. The first like 20-25 minutes is kind of a retrospect on Sabu, but the way I wanted to evolve, I wanted the film to come alive. I didn't want to just be like a 30 for 30 ESPN documentary.
Gotcha.
Film kind of shifts, and it's more of just following him around. And so like there aren't straight interviews with wrestlers, but instead it's like Sabu and Joey Janela talking, or Sabu and Rob just
Mhm.
hanging out. Like one of my favorite scenes is just literally Rob and Sabu. They just hang
Mhm.
out at Rob's house. And
Oh, that's
like
cool.
it's such a cool scene, because they're talking about the last match, then they just go work out, and
Mhm.
like, and that was the cool part of being such a small crew, is just me. So it's just the three of us. So it's not like a orchestrated thing. It was like, what's the most real thing? Well, Sabu would go over to Rob's house. They would just hang out, smoke a joint,
Mhm.
go work out.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
like when I look back, I'm like, that's just a cool scene, especially for
Mhm.
wrestling fans, you know, you're just
Yeah.
on a, where it's like, there's no like dirt in what they're saying. It's just,
Mhm.
you know, we're
Yeah.
just casually hanging out with them. And so that's why I really like the project. There's no straight like, you know, shoot interview styles, but it's just more
Mhm.
of Sabu interacting with the outside world.
Yeah, as a wrestling fan myself, I love that type of the way you shoot like that, like Dark Side of the Ring, those kind of series, the documentary form, because we get to see behind the scenes of a wrestler being, himself, for once. Um,
For
I
sure.
gotta ask you, yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got to ask you now. Obviously, the documentary. Where were you when you heard the news about him passing?
Yeah, so like I said, we talked the week before, and I would have to do things to like, you know, I would be like, we're both Lebanese. And
Oh,
so
wow, okay.
I would say, I would tell him like, hey, I'm gonna get some grape leaves. Let's film today. And so like I would get a bunch of like Lebanese food to like get him
Mhm.
excited about
Okay,
filming.
that's cool.
And so the week before, I literally was like, hey, we got to film this week. It's my birthday. So we got to film this week.
Okay, that's cool.
And so that was like, we texted. He said he was, you know, I think he was in New York or something. And it was a Saturday morning. I just got out of a workout class, and I was on my way to work. And I had about 3 or 4 texts from people, and two of them stick out. One was from Rob, and he basically said Sabu didn't kick out, and my heart dropped. I was so shocked. My brain couldn't like really comprehend it, because you have to understand, as a wrestling fan, it's one thing. I was when I commit to a project, I go all the way in. So day in and day out, I'm living inside of his world, editing him, looking at him literally on
Mhm.
screen, and then
Wow.
talking to him in real life. And so like I was so close to it. And then when I saw it, it didn't make any sense to me, you know, and
Mhm.
I was shaking, you know. I was like calling people. I'm like, you're never gonna believe what just happened, you know. And it's like, yeah, I think about it I think about him all the time. I think about this project all the time because, I've been making movies since I was 10. I'm
Hmm.
never going to be a part of a project that's as unique as this, like,
That's
uh,
crazy.
yeah.
Unbelievable. If Sabu could watch a documentary today, what would you think he would do?
I think he would really respect the commitment that we went
Hmm.
and the lengths that we went, and we don't hold back. And I
Hmm.
think that that was a direct reflection of who he was, and
Hmm.
that's what I appreciate the project is. Like I said, there's some parts that are pretty crazy that he might even be like, that's kind of nuts, But at the same time, I feel like that's who he was. And like
Hmm.
I said, he actually made a joke to me of like, he's like, yeah, I actually hold back for the camera when you're here. So you're not influencing me. I'm pulling back,
Really?
like,
Wow.
so he was the extreme moniker, but I think he would like it, but at the same time, I don't even know if he would watch it. I feel like he would just be worried of like, or he would just be focused on what's next. He
Yeah.
wasn't the kind of guy to look at the past like that, I don't think.
Yeah. Did you cut out anything of the film, or everything is in there? Is in there?
We had to make cuts not based around like, anything extremeness, but more of just like storytelling
Hmm.
of, what's the best flow for the project. And there were some like cool stories, super interesting moments and things like his career itself, you could tell like a whole series on with all the crazy things, like he was shot in the face when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
That's what got into wrestling. Like those moments that are very critical to who he was that like because of just the mechanics of the film we weren't able to include, and I wanted to have that balance between introducing non-wrestling fans to who this person is through his backstory in his own words to the present of showing who he is, and
Hmm.
so like that was really important to me is I wanted to show not tell, and that's why I didn't
Hmm.
want to do a lot of interviews because it's like I didn't want this to be like a shoot interview with some B-roll. I wanted it to be a
Hmm.
living, breathing thing. And so, all the stuff I really wanted in there are in there. At the same time, like if you're a wrestling historian, you're gonna be we go things really quickly, because
Hmm.
I wanted to kind of transcend and have both hardcore fans and non-hardcore fans alike appreciate it.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, the timing, like I said, is perfect because even though he passed, everyone remembers him and loves him. So this documentary now, when is it coming out? September 15th?
Yeah, so September 15th, it's this really cool app. It's called Kinema, where basically you can pre-order it. You
Hmm.
can it's really cool. You can host screenings all around the world. So like
Wow.
literally people can set up something in the UK to screen for the fans. It's going to go live that day. And then, it's really exciting about this project. We're already getting, I can feel the buzz and momentum I've never
Hmm.
felt for other projects because I think
Hmm.
Sept did mean so much to
Yeah.
um, people. So like, we had like a really cool Blu-ray company that reached out to us today and they're like, we love what you're doing. Want to put it out there. So this is just the first phase of the rollout. I can
Hmm.
tell it's going to have like further iterations, but like I said, what I'm most excited about is I think people have an inkling of what the film is, but on September 15th, it's going to be like, I feel like a before and after where there's one expectation of what this is. And then
Hmm.
once people find out what it is, I feel like it's going to spread like fire in that word of mouth. And so it feels like an event film, which in today's
Hmm.
streaming world, it's hard to capture that. And I'm really excited about that because it doesn't come across often.
Is this one of your most favorite project you ever done? Is this the best one?
I think it is just because in the sense I was able to get a full vision, in filmmaking and Hollywood and all these things. It is a very collaborative meeting, and it's so hard to even make a movie, let alone get across what you're trying to get across. You always have to answer this person, do this, cut that, and because of the circumstances, because of the story,
Hmm.
this is probably one time I can hype a movie that I think is going to
Hmm.
live up to the hype, like,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
cool.
I can't wait for this to drop. Sabu's dropping again September 15th. Where can people find you, Joe? And actually, if they need to reach out to you, talk about this documentary, or get you for another interview for somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. So Joe Clarke World, you can find me on different handles. My production company is Back Row Studios. You can find those everywhere too if you want to reach out. Love to get the word out. Like, one cool thing about this project too is I feel like we're doing it in a very Sabu way. There's not a lot of glitz and glam. We're not doing like red carpets and stuff. Like, I feel like what the film is organically becoming is he was the tape trading king, right? And I feel like this film
you're right.
is being released in a very underground cult similar way. And you know, I get goosebumps, you know, just like thinking about it, you know, where it's like, I feel like people are discovering it in that same way. And, you know, it's me reading too much into it, but I feel like Sabu is kind of like winking at us a little bit of like I said, I feel like he knows what he's doing. And, you know, going back to the legacy piece, I feel like the theme for the film was that, you know, like Brian Myers says it during a really cool panel. He says, Sabu never got his flowers, you know, and I hope that this film is his flowers, you know, and it's unfortunate that it wasn't here when he was here, but I feel like that's what makes him a beautiful artist, is that, you know, that's the dance, right?
Yeah.
So,
that's crazy.
So yeah, September 15th, like I said, it's got that underground buzz. I can feel it in the air. So it's really exciting.
Are you planning to do another wrestling documentary after this, or what?
You know, Rob and I, we talk about different ideas of like starting like a production company that just does like wrestling documentaries and stuff like that. I want to take a breath because like,
I'm sure,
one, like, you know, how do you top this? You know what I mean? This is, I feel like I took this to the zenith of how far something can go. You know?
How long from the start and beginning did this take? How long was the whole process from start to beginning?
So we met last January of 2024. So it'll be about a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Long process. Wow.
Yes. Yes. It's very long. And it's like I said, it's surreal to even be at this point, because I was in it for so long that it's a weird feeling to feel that it's almost here, you know. And like that's what's also exciting is like I said, I've been sitting on forever. I know what it is, and Rob knows it is. A couple other people are like, no one knows what it is, you know. So it's like it's kind of it's like that. There's this movie that just came out called Weapons. I don't know if you've heard about it.
Of course, sure did.
It's kind of similar thing where like, you know, there's a lot of mystery going in. You're like, oh, whoa, like I didn't know this. And like, I think this is going to have like a wrestling documentary similar effect where it's like, wow, this is something other than what I thought it was going to be, you know?
Yeah. He should have been a bigger star in the WWE, but he was always that, because he was great. He was an unbelievable legend, you know, and I love Sabu. He was great. One of my favorites. You know, again, September 15th, Joe, thank you so much. Hopefully, if you're up in Jersey, maybe we can grab some dinner or something sometime.
That would be great. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much, man. We can't look forward. September 15th, Sabu. All right. I'll talk to you later, Joe.
Appreciate it.
You got it, man.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand Podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.